Jnana-timirandasya Ananjana Salakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Caitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sarvetam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Sakam Vitamscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagapati Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sutta Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Jai Shri Krishna
Chaitanya
Prabhu Nityananda Srivasadi Gaura Bhattacharya Hare Krishna
Hare Krishna Krishna
Hare
Krishna
Hare
Hare
Hare Rama Hare Rama
Rama
Rama Hare
Rama Hare Hare.
Fantastic. So we're just finishing up chapter 2, which is college marriage and Gandhi's movement. Adi Prabhu's going to read from just down here. I've got my glasses on.
In the class, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. In the class one year, ahead of Abai was a very spiritual nationalist, a very spirited nationalist, Subhas Chandra Bose. He had been a student at Presidency College, but had been expelled for organizing a student strike against a British professor who had repeatedly abused Indian students. At Scottish churches, Bose appeared to be a serious student. He was secretary of the Philosophy Club and was working cooperatively with Vice Chancellor Urquhart. How do you pronounce that word? Urquhart. From Subhas Bose and others, Abai heard talks of Indian independence. He heard the names well known in his native Bengal. Bipin Chandra Pal, who had fought to repeal the Arms Act. Surendranath Banerjee, who startled the British with his agitation against the 1903 partition of Bengal, 1905, sorry. Lala Lajpat Rai, and most notably Mohandas K. Ghandi. Scottish Churches College was strict in forbidding anti-government propaganda, but the students were sympathetic to the cause of Home Rule. Although there were no open signs of rebellion, students sometimes held nationalistic meetings in secret. When Subhas Chandra Bose urged the students to support the Indian independence movement, Abai listened. He liked Bose's faith in spirituality, his enthusiasm and determination. Abai wasn't interested in political activity, but the ideals of the independence movement appealed to him. Many Bengali speakers and writers expressed India's drive for independence, Swarat, as a spiritual movement. For the nationalists, political emancipation was analogous to the soul's liberation from material bondage. Abai was interested in devotional service to Lord Krishna, the Absolute Truth. a conviction he had imbibed from his father and maintained since his childhood. Whereas Indian independence was a temporary relative truth. But some of the leaders of Swaraj, while admitting that the Vedic scriptures were indeed absolute, asserted that the original glory of Indian culture could not shine forth for the world's benefit until India became free from the stigma of foreign rule. The foreigners, they pointed out, blasphemed and castigated the preeminence of India's culture. Abai had felt this also. In his assigned reading in M. Ghosh's England's work in India, he had encountered the theory that the Vedic scriptures were impure, recent writings, and that they were impure, recent writings, and that India's had been a spiritually backward culture before British rule and the spread of Christianity. There were many British insults against the Shastras, such as Abai's professors trying to discount the law of karma. But if India could gain national freedom, then everyone, not only Indians, but the entire world, could benefit from India's highly coveted, highly evolved Vedic culture. The call to Swaraj, The call to Swaraj, although covert, attracted virtually all the students, and Abai amongst them. He was especially interested in Ghandi. Ghandi always carried a Bhagavad Gita, daily read Lord Krishna's holy words, and spoke of being guided by the Gita above all other books. Gandhi's personal habits were pure. He abstained from all intoxication, meat eating, and illicit sex. He lived simply like a sadhu. Yet he seemed to have more integrity than the begging sadhus Abai had seen so many times. Abai read his speeches and followed his activities. Maybe Gandhi could carry spirituality into the field of action. The Gita's truth, Gandhi proclaimed, belonged in a most prominent place, where the Gita not only could be read, but could work for everyone's freedom. And the symbol of that freedom was Swaraj. Nationalist sympathies at Scottish Churches College remained underground during Abai's year as a student. It was a prestigious school. A student had to study very seriously to obtain a degree there, and he could then look forward to a fine career. To speak openly against British rule and in favor of independence meant to risk being expelled. To lose education and career, only the most rebellious would dare. So the students met undercover and listened to the revolutionary leaders. We want Swaraj. We want independence, our own government, our own school.
Gur Mohan watched his son with concern. He saw Abai not as one of the hundreds of millions of instruments meant to change India's political destiny, but as his pet son. His first concern was for Abai's welfare. While world events moved across the stage of history, Gur Mohan concentrated on his son's future as he hoped it would be and as he had always prayed it would be. He was planning for Abai to become a pure Vaishnava, a devotee of Radharani. He had taught Abai to worship Krishna and be pure in character and had arranged for his education. Now Gur Mohan thought of getting him married. According to the Vedic system, a marriage should be carefully arranged by the parents and it should take place before the girl reaches puberty. Gur Mohan had gotten his first daughter married in her 9th year, his second daughter at 12 years, and his third daughter at 11. When his second daughter was going on 12, Rajani had said, "I shall go to the river and commit suicide if you don't get her married at once." In the Vedic system, there was no courtship, nor was the couple allowed to live together during the first years of their marriage. The young girl would begin serving her husband by cooking for him at her parents' house and coming before him to serve him his meal or by taking part in some other formal exchange. Then as the boy and girl grew to physical maturity, they would become so lovable to one another that they would be inseparable. The girl would naturally remain faithful to her husband since she would have no association with any other boy as she grew to puberty. Gaur Mohan had many friends in Calcutta with eligible young daughters, and for a long time he had been considering a suitable wife for Abai. After careful consideration, he finally chose Radharani Datta, the daughter of a Suvarnavanik family associated with the Mullets. Radharani was 11 years old. After the meeting between her father and Gaur Mohan, both families agreed upon the marriage. Although Abai was a third-year college student with no income, it was not uncommon for a student to marry, and he would have no immediate financial responsibilities. Abai didn't appreciate his father's choice of a wife. He had thought of marrying another girl, but in deference to his father, he put aside his reluctance. For the time being, he was living with his family and she with hers, so his marital responsibilities of supporting a family would not be immediate. First, he had to finish college. During his 4th year at Scottish churches, Abai began to feel reluctant about accepting his degree. As a sympathiser to the nationalist cause, he preferred national schools and self-government over the British institutions, but he could see that as yet no such alternatives existed. Ghandi, however, was calling on Indian students to forsake their studies. The foreign-run schools, he said, instilled a slave mentality. They made one no more than a puppet in the hands of the British. Still, a college degree was the basis of a life's career. Abai weighed the choices carefully. Gaur Mohan didn't want Abai to do something he would later regret. He had always tried to plan the best for his son, but Abai was 23 and would have to make this decision for himself. Gaur Mohan thought of the future. The horoscope said his son would be a great religious preacher at age 70, but Gaur Mohan did not expect to live to see it. Still, he had every reason to accept the horoscope as accurate, and he wanted to prepare Abai. He tried to plan things accordingly, but there was no way to guess what Krishna would do. Everything depended on Krishna, and Krishna was above nationalism, above planning and the laws of astrology, and above the desires of a modest cloth merchant aspiring to make his son a pure devotee, Srimati Radharani, and a preacher of Srimad Bhagavatam. Although Gaur Mohan had always allowed Abai to do what he wanted, he had also carefully guided him always on the path he knew was best. Now, without interfering with Abai's decision about college, Gaur Mohan set about to arrange good employment for him, regardless of what else might happen. In 1920, Abai completed his 4th year of college and took the BA exam. Afterwards, with the ordeal of final examinations behind him, he took a short vacation. To fulfill a long-cherished desire, he travelled alone, a day's journey by train to Jagannath Puri. Srila Prabhupada. Every day of my boyhood, I used to think how to go to Jagannath Puri and how to go to Vrindavan. At that time, the fare was for Vrindavan 4 or 5 rupees, and similarly for Jagannath Puri. So I was thinking, when shall I go? I took the first opportunity to go to Jagannath Puri.
He walked along the same broad street where for thousands of years the Rath-yatra procession had passed. In the market, shops displayed small carved and painted wooden murtis of Lord Jagannath. Although it was not Rath-yatra season, tourists were purchasing souvenirs, and in the temple they purchased Jagannath Prasadam. In the Jagannath temple, 56 gigantic offerings of cooked rice and vegetables were presented daily in worship for the deities of Jagannath, Balaram, and Subhadra. Abai entered the temple and saw the deities. On a side altar stood the Murti of Lord Caitanya in his 6-armed form, manifesting himself simultaneously as Krishna, Ram, and the sannyasi Lord Caitanya. Lord Caitanya was famous in Puri, where he had spent the last 18 years of his life conducting Hare Krishna Kirtan with his followers and dancing ecstatically at the yearly Rath-yatra as the carts were wheeled along the main road, surrounded by thousands of devotees. Lord Caitanya had danced and swooned in the ecstasy of his intense love in separation from Lord Krishna. Passing over the parade route, Abai recalled his own childhood pastimes, singing and dancing in the street, the miniature cart, the procession, Jagannath smiling, his father and mother, Radha Govinda. Somehow, the fame of Lord Jagannath had inspired him as a child, and it remained within him all these years. When shall I go to Jagannath Puri? His childhood dreaming of Puri and Vrindavan, and his compulsively studying the train tables, scheming since the age of 5 to travel here, were based on more than just a desire to tour Puri's marketplace, and he was not satisfied by once seeing the deity in the noisy, crowded temple. He had been impelled to come to Puri as a pilgrim, and his motive was devotion to Krishna. Now nationalism was strongly influencing his life, and he had recently married and was facing the decisions of graduation and career. Yet here he was, hardly more than a boy, walking alone in Puri, where Lord Caitanya had lived, and where Lord Krishna's Jagannath still resided. Abai relished his break from the pressure of duties in Calcutta. He didn't know how the love he felt for Krishna and Krishna's pilgrimage place would fit into his life. He knew that Krishna was more important than anything else. He was God, the supreme controller, and everyone's inner guide. But there was so much token, superficial service to God. Even the nationalist speakers, although they carried the Gita on their person, were more intent on nationalism than on Krishna. Only those who were sincere devotees knew the importance and attraction of Krishna, people like his father. An odd incident occurred at Puri. Gaur Mohan had given Abai a letter of introduction to an acquaintance who lived in Jagannath Puri. Abai went to see him and was well received. When the man was offering him lunch, however, Abai noticed a small lump within one of the cooking pots. He questioned his host, who replied, "Oh, it's meat." Abai was unable to restrain his shock. "No, what is this? I have never taken meat." Abai looked at his host in astonishment. "I never expected this at Jagannath Puri." Ashamed, his host said, "I did not know. I thought this was best." Abai pacified the man, but he put his food aside and took no more meals there. After that, Abai ate only the Jagannath prasadam from the temple. Abai stayed in Puri for 3 or 4 days, wandering around the holy places and visiting the famous Puri seaside with its sparkling beach and strongly pounding surf. Several times he recognized some of the priests from the Jagannath temple as they smoked cigarettes, and he heard of another unsavory activities of the sadhus connected with the temple. What kind of sadhus were these who ate fish with their Jagannath prasadam and smoked? In this respect, he found Jagannath Puri disappointing.
Lend me your glasses, please. Wow. Oh, these don't work. No. Usually they're kind of generic stuff.
And prescription.
They really don't work. Right, where are we? Disappointing.
Top of the page.
Here?
Yeah, just turn the page.
Okay, excuse me. When Abai returned home, he found his young wife crying. Then he heard how her friends had told her, "Your husband is not coming back." He told her not to worry. There was no truth in the story. He had only gone for a few days and was now back. Although his marriage had only recently begun, Abai was dissatisfied. Radharani Datta was an attractive young girl, but Abai had never really liked her. He was thinking maybe a different wife would be better, a second wife besides this one. In India, it was socially acceptable to marry a second wife. So Abai decided to take the matter into his own hands. He made arrangements to approach the parents of another girl. But when his father heard about it, he called Abai and said, "My dear boy, you are eager to take a second wife, but I would advise you not to. It is Krishna's grace that your present wife is not to your liking. Take it as a great favor, great fortune. If you do not become too attached to your wife and friends, that will help you to your future advancement in spiritual life. Abba accepted his father's advice. He wanted to obey his father and he appreciated the saintly viewpoint. But he remained thoughtful, a bit awed by his father's forethought, and he wondered how one day in the future he would be advancing in spiritual life and be grateful that his father had done this. Your future advancement in spiritual life. Abba liked the idea. He reconciled himself to the wife he had been given. Abba Charan Dey's name was included on the posted list of students who had passed the BA exams and were invited to appear for their diploma. But Abba had decided he didn't want a diploma from Scottish Churches College. Although as a graduate he would have a promising career, it would be a British tainted career. If Gandhi succeeded, India would soon be rid of the British. It would take another 25 years. This is only 1922, right? 21 or something. Abba had made his decision, and when graduation day arrived, the college authorities learned of his rejecting his diploma. In this way, Abba registered his protest and signaled his response to Gandhi's call. Wow. Gandhi's protest had increased in its pitch in recent months. During the war, Indians had remained loyal to the crown in hopes of generating British sympathy towards the case of independence. But in 1919, England had passed the Rowlatt Act to repress the move for Indian freedom. Gandhi had then called on all Indians to observe a hartal, a day in which people all over the country had stayed home from work. It's like a strike. Stayed home from work and school in protest. Although it had been a non-violent protest, 1 week later in Amritsar, in the public square known as Jallianwala Bagh, British soldiers shot to death hundreds of unarmed, defenseless Indians who had gathered for a peaceful meeting. Gandhi then lost all faith in the intentions of the empire towards India, calling for complete non-cooperation. He ordered a boycott of everything British, commodities, schools, courts, military honours. And Abba, in refusing his degree, was moving to align himself more closely with Gandhi's independence movement. But his heart was not in it. Just he had never given his heart to his college studies, to earning a degree, to his wife, so he was reserved about becoming a full-fledged nationalist. Abba had become inclined towards the course, but never really convinced. Now out of school, out of work, caring little for his career, education, or wife, he remained at home. He tried his hand at writing poetry for the occasion of a friend's wedding. He read Srimad Bhagavatam and the latest speeches of Gandhi. He had no immediate plans.
Gaur Mohan had his plans for Abba, and the college degree had been an integral part of those plans. But Krishna, it seemed, had other plans. The political protest of refusing the Bachelor of Arts degree was more a mark of honour than a social stigma, and Gaur Mohan did not reproach his son for it. But Abba still needed to take up some kind of work. Gaur Mohan approached his friend Kartik Bose and asked him to employ Abba. Dr. Kartik Chandra Bose, an intimate friend, had been the family doctor since Abba's childhood. He was a distinguished surgeon, a medical scholar, and a chemical industrialist. He had his own establishment, Bose's Laboratory in Calcutta, where he manufactured drugs, soaps, and other products for the pharmaceutical industry. Dr. Bose was well known throughout India as the first Indian to manufacture pharmaceutical preparations that had formerly been monopolized by European firms. He agreed to accept Abba as a department manager at his laboratory. Although Abba knew little of the pharmaceutical industry or of management, he felt confident that by reading a few related books, he could learn what he needed to know. But when this new young man was suddenly given the post of department manager, several workers became dissatisfied. Some of them were elderly and had been 40 years with the firm. They voiced their dissatisfaction amongst themselves and finally confronted Dr. Bose. Why had this young man been put in charge? Dr. Bose replied, "Oh, for that position, I needed someone I could trust like my own son. He is signing checks for 40,000 rupees. I could only entrust the personal handling of my accounts in that department to him. His father and I are very close, and this young man is known to me practically as my son." Gaur Mohan felt he had done his best. His prayer was that the principles of pure Vaishnavism he had taught his son would stay with him and guide him throughout his life. Ghandi and the cause of Swaraj had disrupted Abhai's college career, and Abhai was still inclined towards nationalism, but not so much for a political motive as for a spiritual vision. So Gaur Mohan was content. He knew the marriage arrangement was not pleasing to Abhai, but Abhai had accepted his explanation that detachment from wife and family affairs would be good for spiritual advancement. And Abhai was showing an inherent disinterest in materialistic affairs. This also did not displease Gaur Mohan, to whom business had always been subservient to his worship of Lord Krishna. He had expected this. Now Abhai had a promising job and would be making the best of his marriage. Gaur Mohan had done what he could, and he depended on Krishna for the ultimate result.
Ghandi, bolstered by his emergence as a leader among the Congress party, now openly attacked the empire's exploitative cloth trade with India. England was purchasing raw cotton from India at the lowest prices, manufacturing it into cloth in the Lancashire mills in England, and then selling the monopolized cloth at high prices to the Indian millions. Gandhi's propaganda was that India should return to making her own cloth using simple spinning wheels and hand looms, thus completely boycotting the British-made cloth and attacking an economic base of Britain's power over India. Travelling by train throughout the country, Ghandi repeatedly appealed to his countrymen to reject all foreign cloth and wear only the simple, coarse khadi produced from India's own cottage industry. Before the British rule, India had spun and woven her own cloth. Ghandi argued that by breaking the cottage industries, the British were sinking the Indian masses into semi-starvation and lifelessness. To set the example, Ghandi himself worked daily at a primitive spinning wheel and wore only a simple, coarse loincloth and shawl. He would hold meetings and ask people to come forth and reject their imported cloth. On the spot, people would throw down heaps of cloth and he would set it ablaze. Gandhi's wife complained that the khadi was too thick and not convenient to wear while cooking. She asked if while cooking she could wear the light British-made cloth. "Yes, you're free to cook with your meal cloth on," Ghandi had told her, "but I must exercise a similar freedom by not taking the meal so prepared." The cause of cottage industry appealed to Abhai. He too was not enamored with the modern industrial advances the British had introduced in India. Not only was simple living goods for the long-term national economy of hundreds of millions of Indians, as Ghandi was emphasizing, but to Abhai, it was also the way of life most conducive to spiritual culture. Abhai put aside his mill-manufactured cloth and took to wearing khadi. Now his dress revealed him to whomever he met, British and Indian alike. He was a nationalist, a sympathizer of revolution. To wear khadi in India in the early 1920s was not a mere clothing fad. It was a political statement. It meant he was a Gandhian.
Srila Prabhupada ki
Jai.
Jai. Hare Krishna, that's the end of chapter 2. Getting lively. Anyone has any Kush? Hare Krishna, welcome. And Hare Krishna to Meenal. Thanks for writing a nice message in the chat box, Meenal. Hare Krishna to you too. Don't know if anyone's got any comments or reflections. Look at Kush's handsome face. Did you see that? Did you see that?
Yeah, I haven't seen
Gorgeous.
Kush in ages.
Absolutely gorgeous. I haven't seen him without his glasses on for a long time. He's a stunner. Anyway, that aside, I don't know if anyone's got any comments or questions or reflections or anything like that about what we heard. It'd be nice to discuss it a bit.
You know that film Ghandi?
Oh yeah, with Ben Kingsley in it.
Yeah, it was won loads of Oscars. It was
Yeah.
a massive, big film. It's like they don't make many films in India. Hollywood and all that. They don't make big films in India. It must have been very difficult for them to make it.
To actually shoot it,
The whole thing and just deal with the whole thing. But that film has got a lot of them scenes in it where there's soldiers shoot, this mad British major shoots all these people in cold blood and they fall down this well in Amritsar and burning the cloth and Gandhi traveling around preaching. It brings back memories of that film and that Prabhupada, you know, he's 20. How old is he? In his 20s.
Yeah,
Early 20s. He's right there in all of that.
It's quite intense. I remember in that film they go on a strike. It was about salt as well.
Yeah.
They were trying to steal all the salt from India, take it away or something.
Yeah, Gandhi went to the ocean. He walked all the way to the ocean by foot. And then when he got to the ocean, he said, we make our own salt instead of buying it from the British, something like that.
Yeah.
He told everyone, just make your own salt.
I remember I think there's a scene there where they all have this peaceful protest. They just stand or they sit and then protest. The police come and just start beating them. The Gandhi's telling them, don't fight back. It's like, he's quite a powerful person. And I remember there's one Prabhupada class I listened to, he talks about celibacy. And he says that Gandhi was such a powerful personality because he practiced celibacy.
He said his celibacy was what drove the British out of India. Nothing
Gave
else.
him the determination.
Gave him the power.
Yeah. Kush asked the question, did Prabhupada meet Gandhi? I don't think he met him, but he wrote a famous letter to him.
That's right.
Yeah. Prabhupada wrote a famous letter, which we might be able to find actually. But
See, the strong point of Gandhi was his cottage industry, village life, just consuming what you can produce, not going modernization, you know, all that. And that's what Prabhupada was attracted to, because that's Vedic culture. And so that was a strong point of Gandhi. Simple living.
yeah. Like, so he had the right idea, but I guess he engaged it for not the right purpose, in a sense, because he wasn't doing it. It was more of a political purpose than a spiritual one. Is that correct, you think?
Well, I mean, he had his purpose, you know, to get India free from British rule. It didn't do them much good, though. India soon copied the West through industrialization.
Yeah.
So it really didn't do very much. But anyway, it caused a lot of issues. I mean, that's a whole political. We could talk about that for ages. But yeah, simple living, simple cloth. That's amazing that they sent the cloth all the way to England, used advanced machinery in the mills of Yorkshire and Lancashire, and sent it back to England, India to sell it, make good profit. It was all by sea and train, and there was no cargo planes in them days. Gandhi actually went to England and visited the mills.
Oh, really? He went to those mills? I know he went to
and all these northern women who worked in the mills all came round him, and it was a whole thing. It was a big, exciting event.
Wow.
But you see, Prabhupada's going to meet Bhaktisiddhanta, his guru, in the next chapter.
Yeah.
And then that's really great because he seems to be struggling with his identity a bit.
Yeah.
He's not quite.
He's like trying to find his.
He's got his father and that, and he's a devotee, but he hasn't all come together until he meets his guru. So that's coming up, and that's really that's a good part.
You know what I was thinking when we were reading it as well? It's like we obviously we glorify Prabhupada, and everyone who practices Krishna consciousness, we owe everything to Prabhupada, and like that. But actually, we owe quite a lot to his dad. I was reading that thinking, do you know what? Actually, you know what I mean? Like his dad actually was obviously Krishna's arranging everything ultimately, but his dad had like a really big part in that. Like because earlier when we heard about his mum wanted him to go a certain way, you know, like,
I wanted to be a lawyer, go to England.
yeah, and all that stuff.
His dad said no.
And his dad said, no, we keep him here so he doesn't get corrupted, and taught him how to play Mridanga, and, you know, bought him the rat cart and everything. So it just makes me think like we actually owe a lot to Prabhupada's dad in a way, in one sense, on one level.
Well, Prabhupada dedicated which book to his father? Gormahande. Which book?
Oh.
Is it Krishna? No. Is it Bhagavatam or Nectar Devotion or I don't know.
Oh, okay.
Which book is it?
It might be Nectar of Devotion. It's just there, I can look.
I know,
if it's not that, then I don't know.
It's dedicated to Gormahande, isn't it? Unless it's Caitanya
I'll have a look at the
Bhagavad Gita.
Nectar of Devotion.
Bhagavad Gita dedicates to
Baladev Vidyabhushan.
Baladev Vidyabhushan, yeah.
So he dedicates that to his father. I think it might be Caitanya Charitamrita. And he says, who imbibed in me the initial teachings of Vaishnavism and Krishna consciousness. So his dad's a guru, one of his gurus, Prabhupada's gurus. Where is that? That's a good point. It's a quiz. We don't know the answer.
We failed.
Grab the first volume, Adi Leela, Chaitanya Charitamrita.
Okay.
Do you know what else I was thinking while we do that? Just one other reflection that I had is that I mean, I don't want to spoil the next. Well, I'm not going to spoil the next chapter, but he meets his guru, right? And he's trying to deal with, there's a big issue, the nationalism thing, and the British being there. It's like a hot topic of the day, right? It's like the big thing. And then, but eventually,
One second. The guru just.
yeah, he comes to the conclusion, actually, no, that's not the most important. And I think now, if you go on like social media or read the news or whatever, you go into a cafe or a pub and talk to anyone, so many hot topics of the day. If it's like political, economic, coronavirus, everything like that. So actually, you see what Prabhupada goes through, and even when he's like a baby, we're reading as we're going through each chapter, and the things that he was doing 100 odd years ago, they're like so relevant now.
I was
transcendental.
I was thinking that the Indians want independence from the British.
Yeah.
The British are the bad guys.
Yeah.
But then the British leave, and the British, then the Muslim-Indian problem, and then partition, millions of people die. And they were so reluctant to let India go because they got so much wealth from India.
Mm-hmm.
Churchill, he said, would never give up control of India. He was totally against it. And he was a racist. We know that he didn't like Indians. And, nowadays, they're going back on the black people's past. What about what the British did to the Indians and the British did to the Africans? And, it's just, it'll all come around again, won't it? It's like, where's it going to go next?
Mm.
What did the Muslims do to India? What did the British do to India? Why isn't everyone going on about that? Maybe they will be going on about that next.
Yeah.
But there's no solution. It's always trouble.
Yeah.
So the transcendental solution was solved by Prabhupada when he met his guru.
Yeah,
The Ghandi issue. He said it's not important, only transcendental. So we're transcendentalists, isn't it? We're supposed to be above politics, above all these petty arguments, and it's the same argument there 100 years ago. We're oppressed by the bad people.
Yeah. We can't be happy until
they're gone. But when they're gone, it was just as bad or worse.
We're just reading, because we've been doing the study group with Lilamrta, and we've been reading the introduction. It says, what is the... Because you just said we're transcendentalists, and the Bhagavad Gita introduction, Prabhupada said the primary activity of a transcendentalist is to understand that you're not the body. So that's actually our primary thing.
And I want to say that devotees, they shouldn't get involved in these political issues. I mean,
Yeah. So
they shouldn't go on one point or the other. They shouldn't side with either side. It's all nonsense.
That's why it's so important, I think, to hear Prabhupada's life story, because he's actually done it. It's not kind of like you have like you can find that conclusion in the philosophy, you know, of reading all the scriptures.
Yeah.
But it's so, in one sense, it's so much easier to access it because he's actually living a life just like we are, not that distant from us. 100 years is nothing, is it, in the grand scheme of it? So you kind of hear, you know what I mean? You see Prabhupada actually living the conclusion of the philosophy. And it's, I find it really easy to reflect on it and then apply it yourself.
Actually, Prabhupada's Leela is very easy to read for people.
Yeah.
They can't read Bhagavad Gita so easily.
Yeah.
They read Lilamrta, a small one, of course.
Yeah.
It's like a movie.
So
Yeah.
well written. Do you want to hear Prabhupada's letter to Ghandi that he wrote?
Yeah.
We can. It's not really long, but we might maybe read it between us.
Wasn't in that. You carry on reading. I'm just going to get Krishna book. I think it wasn't in Caitanya.
I couldn't see it.
I reckon.
It said it wrote it just to my friends. It didn't say anybody specific.
Carry on.
So this is it's a letter to Mahatma Gandhi, written in Kanpur, 12th of July 1947. And it's written to Mahatma Gandhi Ji, Bangi Colony, New Delhi.
It was Krishna.
It was Krishna book.
Yeah. I'll read that in a minute.
Yeah. So Prabhupada writes, "My dear friend Mahatma Ji, please accept my respect." Well, this is written in proper like Indian English. Like, I think they call it Babu English. I think that's what the British called it. Babu English. Anyway, please accept my respectful namaskar. I am your unknown friend, but I had to write to you at times, and again, although you never cared to reply them. I sent you my papers back to Godhead, but your secretaries told me that you have very little time to read the letters, and much less for reading the magazines. I asked for an interview with you, but your busy secretaries never cared to reply this. Anyway, as I am your very old friend, although unknown to you, I am again writing to you in order to bring to you the rightful position deserved by you. As a sincere friend, I must not deviate from my duty towards a friend like your good self. This is 1947, so it's like 25 years later.
This is the year of independence.
Right. And Prabhupada's taken sannyas?
Not
No,
yet.
Varnapras. Amazing. Okay.
Yeah. I think he has.
So it's sometime later.
I think he has. Prabhupada's renounced. Yeah.
Okay. I tell you as a sincere friend that you must immediately retire from active politics if you do not desire to die an inglorious death. You have 125 years to live as you have desired to live, but if you die an inglorious death, it is no work. The honor and prestige that you have obtained during the course of present lifetime, were not possible to be obtained by anyone else within the living memory. But you must know that all these honors and prestiges were false, inasmuch as they were created by the illusory energy of Godhead, called the Maya. By this falsity, I do not mean to say that your so many friends were false to you, nor you were false to them. By this falsity, I mean illusion, or in other words, the false friendship and honors obtained thereby were but creation of Maya, and therefore they are always temporary, or false as you may call it. But none of you, neither your friends nor yourself, knew this truth. Now by the grace of God, that illusion is going to be cleared, and thus your faithful friends like Acharya Krimpalini and others are accusing you for your inability at the present moment to give them any practical program of work, as you happen to give them during your glorious days of non-cooperation movement. So you are also in a plight to find out a proper solution for the present political tangle created by your opponents. You should therefore take a note of warning from your insignificant friend like me, that unless you retire timely from politics and engage yourself cent per cent, that's 100%, in the preaching work of Bhagavad Gita, which is the real function of the Mahatmas, you shall have to meet with such inglorious deaths as Mussolini, Hitler's, Tojo's, Churchill's, or Lloyd George's met with. Wow. Lloyd George was the English Prime Minister before Churchill.
Even earlier.
Like in the First World War.
Yeah. Huh. Before Chamberlain.
Okay, yeah.
After Disraeli.
you can very easily understand as to how some of your political enemies in the garb of friends, both Indian and English, have deliberately cheated you and have broken your heart by doing the same mischief for which you have struggled so hard for so many years. You wanted chiefly Hindu-Muslim unity in India, and they have tactfully managed to undo your work by creation of the Pakistan and India separately. You wanted freedom for India, but they have given permanent dependence of India. You wanted to do something for the upliftment of the position of the Bangis, but still they are still rotting as Bangis, even though you are living in the Bangi colony. They are all therefore illusions, and when these things will be presented to you as they are, you must consider them as God sent. God has favored you by dissipating the illusion you were hovering in, and by the same illusion you were nursing those ideas as truth.
It's a huge long letter.
We've done half it, it's halfway.
You must know that you are in the relative world, which is called by the sages as Dvaita, i.e. dual, and nothing is absolute here. Your ahimsa is always followed by himsa, as the light is followed by darkness, or the Father is followed by the Son. Nothing is absolute truth in this dual world. You did not know this, neither you ever cared to know this from the right sources, and therefore all your attempts to create unity were followed by disunity and ahimsa. Ahimsa was followed by himsa. But it is better late than never. You must now know something about the absolute truth. The truth for which you have been experimenting so long is relative. The relative truths are creations of the devi Maya, qualified by the three modes of nature. They're all insurmountable, as is explained in the Bhagavad Gita. The absolute truth is the absolute Godhead. In the Katara Upanishad, it is ordered that one must approach the bona fide guru, who is not only well versed in all the scriptures of the world, but is also the realized soul in Brahman, the absolute, in order to learn the science of the absolute truth. So it is also instructed in the Bhagavad Gita as follows: Tad vidi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshanti tajjnanam jnaninas tatvadashina 434. But I know that you never underwent such transcendental training except some severe penances, which you were invented for your own purpose, as you have invented so many things in the source of experimenting with the relative truths. You might have easily avoided them if you had approached the Guru as above mentioned, but your sincere efforts to attain some godly qualities by austerities, etc., surely have raised you to some higher position, which you can better utilize for the purpose of the absolute truth. If you, however, remain satisfied with such temporary position only, and do not try to know the absolute truth, then surely you have to fall down from the artificially exalted position under the laws of nature. But if you really want to approach the absolute truth and want to do some real good to the people in general all over the world, which shall include your ideas of unity, peace, and non-violence, then you must give up the rotten politics immediately and rise up for the preaching work of the philosophy and religion of Bhagavad Gita without offering unnecessary and dogmatic interpretations on them. I'd occasionally discussed this subject in my paper Back to Godhead, and a leaf from the same is enclosed here for your reference. I would only request you to retire from politics, at least for a month only, and let us have discussion on Bhagavad Gita. I am sure thereby that you shall get a new light from the result of such discussions, not only for your benefit, but for the benefit of the world at large, as I know that you are sincere, honest, and moralist, that you are a sincere, anyway, you're honest and moral. Awaiting your reply only, yours sincerely, Avaicharam Day. Enclosed one leaf from Bhagavad Gita. I'll just see where the address is. Bangi, Cornport. Yeah, I wonder where that is. Prabhupada's in Cornport when he wrote this. Anyway, who knows? I think Prabhupada's taken Vanaprastha in 1945 or something. I don't know, 44, 43, because he was publishing first Back to Godhead. Easy Journey to Other Planets was 1944.
Okay.
So he must have already taken Vanaprastha earlier. I should know the dates. Okay, you read this then, Hema. This is Prabhupada's, because we're talking about Prabhupada's father. Mantra started to discuss him. So this is Krishna book. Prabhupada's great Krishna book, written sometime in the 60s, late 60s.
Yeah.
Just there. Read the whole thing.
To my father, Mohan Day, 1849 to 1930, a pure devotee of Krishna, who raised me as a Krishna-conscious child from the beginning of my life. In my boyhood ages, he instructed me how to play the mridanga. He gave me Radha Krishna Vigraha to worship, and he gave me Jagannath Rath to duly observe the festival as my childhood play. He was kind to me, and I imbibed from him the ideas later on solidified by my spiritual master, the Eternal Father.
Jai. Kush has another question. Kush, you can unmute yourself and ask the question. We want to hear your voice. It purifies us to hear you speak.
Hi Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, you right?
Yeah, we're great.
Yeah, good. So my question was, you told me some time ago that Gandhi wrote a version of the Bhagavad Gita, right? So was that after he read the letter from Prabhupada, or did he just decide to make a Bhagavad Gita based on his interpretations?
Yeah, thanks, Kush. Yeah, I mean, the kind of Gandhi's Bhagavad Gita that I read, I don't know if you ever came across that, was it was actually at some point Gandhi was living in he had like an ashram somewhere in India, and his kind of followers lived there, and every day, all part of Gandhi's program was to lecture on Bhagavad Gita, and they recorded it. Either they wrote it, or I don't know if they could record the sound then, or what, I don't know. And so I think, as far as I remember, after he passed away, his followers then transcribed all of those Bhagavad Gita classes that he gave as purports to the verses, and it was published like that. That's what I read. And the only thing I remember reading, the only thing I remember, so I don't know, I don't think Gandhi actually did his own commentary, like he actually wrote a book on Bhagavad Gita. I think it was compiled later from his talking, his lectures. And I remember reading, like, there's one famous verse in Bhagavad Gita where Krishna says to Arjuna that you're entitled to work, like you have to work in this world, but you're not entitled to the fruit of your work, the fruit of your actions. And so, and I remember when Gandhi's talking about it, he says something like, you're entitled to work, but like the British are not entitled to the fruit of your actions. You know, he's talking about it like that, something like that, I remember. So I was reading it sort of parallel with Prabhupada's. I read Prabhupada.
Before you joined?
Yeah. My brother had so many Bhagavad Gitas.
Wow.
So I took all these Bhagavad Gitas and was like going through them.
Comparing them.
Yeah. So I was reading that kind of statement. It was something like that. You're entitled to work, but your work should be for your country, for India, and it shouldn't be stolen by the British or something like that. And then I was reading Prabhupada's and thinking, well, hang on a minute, this sort of, one of them looks like it's a higher level than that. So, and obviously, as I think, like Prabhupada mentioned in that letter, that he wasn't trained.
I'll tell you one thing about that letter, is that Prabhupada wrote in that letter, and very soon Gandhi was shot.
Yeah.
I was just looking at the dates. So I was trying to see if I think there's like less than a year apart.
Yeah, within a year.
That's what I was just looking at.
And Prabhupada's basically prophesizing that you're going to die in a bad way. And you're going to lose glory. And Prabhupada was right. Gandhi was shot. Yeah. Soon after.
Thanks for answering that, Prabhu.
Thank you, Kush, for such a nice question.
Thank you.
In Kent, is he?
Kush is in Crawley.
Crawley, oh.
Crawley. Yeah.
Come down to Brighton one Friday.
Friday.
Have I seen you there in Brighton?
Brighton. Prabhu, can you send me the details?
Hare Krishna Brighton, yeah. It's they have a Friday program every Friday. Really nice program after lockdown.
After lockdown, yeah, 100%.
You'll love it there.
That's where Mantra Prabhu used to be.
Yeah. It's a great program, the Brighton one. Yeah. Very lively. Crawley, few guys come down sometimes.
Yeah, because it's close to Gatwick, so
you'll love it there, guarantee it.
Yeah, for sure. A bit of Harinam there would be nice.
We do Harinam sometimes in Brighton. Great place for Harinam. Brilliant. Thanks for Hare now.
Sure.
Okay.
Great. Arvind's got his camera on. Did you have anything to say, or you're good?
No, Prabhuji, I'm all good, thank you.
Okay, brilliant. So I think that wraps things up for today, for this week. And then we just finished chapter 2, so the next week we'll hear about Prabhupada, a very saintly person. Cliffhanger.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So thanks everybody,
Thank you.
and thanks everybody watching on Facebook later. We'll see everyone next week. Srila Prabhupada ki.
Jai.
Jai.
Vaishnav Sadhu Sangha ki.
Jai.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Everybody.